Well, he's pro-life and sometimes pro-Trump and anti-gay marriage. And right now, he's the leading contender to win the most Democratic congressional district seat in the country. His name is Ruben Diaz. I'm Scott Ott with Stephen Green and Bill Whittle, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, Ruben Diaz Sr. Is all of those things that I just mentioned, and in fact, he's called by some of his opponents homophobic because at one point he said that the city council on which he serves in New York was controlled by the homosexual community. There are 12 people currently in the race for this seat that Hillary Clinton, a district that Hillary Clinton won by 93.7% of the vote. So this is a heavily Democratic district. On June 23rd, the primary is scheduled to happen. And in a district like that, the primary is the general election. So if Ruben Diaz Sr. Happens to win this, then they will have somebody they consider to be a dino in what used to be a heavily progressive district. In fact, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has actually, and like the Socialist Workers' Party of America or something, have endorsed another candidate, but he's pretty far down in this pack of 12 people. Ruben Diaz, we'll probably see if we can get a picture of him on the thumbnail here. He's in New York, but he wears a cowboy hat. And as they say in his two-thirds Hispanic district, he looks really badass. So this is the guy who could be the next congressman from this district. He's a Pentecostal minister, Stephen Green, and he's last seen going around the streets handing out masks to people so that they can have COVID-19 masks. It seems like he is connecting with people in ways that mainstream progressive Democrats are not. How do you see his chances?
Wow. Well, mainstream progressive Democrats. The problem is the progressives have become the mainstream of the Democratic Party, and it's dangerous as all hell. You know, they're talking about eliminating the entire police department in Minneapolis. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez chased out how many thousands of high-paying jobs that Amazon was going to bring into her district. These are not widely popular policies. Increasing criminality and decreasing jobs generally don't poll that well. So whatever this guy's cultural differences might be with the Democratic base in that district, he might just have a real shot here because he's not a progressive Democrat. What's going to help, though, you said there are how many candidates on this ballot?
A dozen.
A dozen. Yeah, you split the vote that much and you never know what's going to happen. That's what Michael Bloomberg did. He ran as a Republican simply because he couldn't win the Democratic primary, but he had the money and the name recognition to win as a Republican that everyone understood would actually govern as a Democrat. Bill de Blasio, he is a progressive Democrat who is spent his term and a half busily undoing all the good that Rudy Giuliani and Bloomberg did for that city. And he won with something like 38% of the vote. You know, wide field, the progressive gets in. Maybe in this case, because of a wide field, the guy who isn't a traditional New York progressive gets in. And maybe that's a good sign for the Democratic Party. But judging by what's going on in the rest of the city and the rest of the country, probably not.
Bill, one of the assemblymen in that district said that this would be an absolute embarrassment to the Bronx on a national level. And the sort of runner-up in this contest right now, the guy who appears to be in second place is a guy named Richie Torres, who's running against somebody that they're smearing as saying he's homophobic. Richie Torres is the first openly gay member of the city council to serve. They're also the youngest member of city council to serve. Mr. Diaz says that, in fact, he's not homophobic. He just believes the Bible and he doesn't hate anybody. But Mr. Diaz has another advantage, Bill. His son, who has the same name, is actually a borough president, I believe. And Ruben Diaz Jr. is a popular Bronx borough president. And so the name on the ballot, Ruben Diaz, may pick up some votes that people didn't even know was going to young Ruben's cowboy pop.
Well, that may be true. I don't believe I've ever gone to a movie expecting to see Cuba Gooding Sr., but you never know. in any event, this is one of those things that are possibly outliers. But when you get enough outliers, you start to get a picture that maybe something's really moving. We had the congressional seat in Los Angeles go to a Republican in Los Angeles. That was kind of shocking. And the one that I just still will never get over was Donald Trump pulled more votes than either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary in California. That's amazing.
Yeah.
He pulled more votes in the Republican primary than they did in the Democratic primary, right?
He had more people voting for him than Biden did, or more people came out to vote for Donald Trump than than Biden or Bernie, but not more than them both together.
Oh, okay.
But he's unopposed. I mean, it's an astonishing thing. You know, you just never know. But these are the kind of things that really get my attention, and I think they probably get the Democrats' attention too. It is. You know, I was thinking about this because the country's looking more and more like 1968. There's more and more unrest in the streets. The Democrats are going further and further left. They ran, you know, with these. They were going to run Eugene. Was it
McCarthy?
I want to say McCarthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and they go further left. And then in '68, they had the riots at the convention in Chicago, and America sees their cities burning, and they go heavily Republican and conservative. And I'm starting to get the feeling that that's kind of going on here, that there's a limit to the amount of progressive lunacy that the American people are willing to take in order to signal their virtue, but comes a point where now it's serious. And I think you can usually find the line at where things get serious is whenever you hear Democrats saying, I need to buy a gun. When things get to that point, then you know that there may be tectonic motion going on, because I've described it just not too long ago. It's like for these people, for these progressives or liberals anyway, it's like progressivism is like a comet that, you know, or let me rephrase that. Reality is like a comet that comes like every 30 years or so, you know, and most of the time they get to do what they want to and have a happy time. And then all of a sudden, every 30 years, reality like appears in the sky, you know, this flaming sword of reality. And they kind of go, maybe I ought to buy a gun, and maybe this whole, defunding the police thing is a good idea for other people's neighborhoods, but you know, so who knows? We may be reaching the point of having passed peak progressivism, and people momentarily returning to sanity until things get so good that they can afford to be insane again.
I think one of the most disturbing things about this otherwise comical story is the way, and this isn't true just of Democrats, this is true of Republicans and Democrats, but the way that Mr. Diaz is getting pressure from members of the party, or I'm sorry, other people who are running against Mr. Diaz are getting pressure from people in the party to pull out of the race, basically saying you're splitting the progressive vote, and therefore this guy that we find reprehensible is going to win because, as Steve talked about, you know, you're dividing the vote among another 11 candidates. And this is the idea of that parties are constantly trying to marshal their resources around the most electable person, and they don't like it when outsiders get involved in the race. And even though they'll say that this is a country where anybody can run for Congress, anybody can become president, if you've got a dream and you've got a willingness to serve and all that kind of stuff, in reality, they mean anybody that we vet and accept and approve of can be a member of Congress. And so the rest of you people need to get out so that Richie Torres or one of these other guys can beat Ruben Diaz. I wish all the best to Mr. Diaz, not only because his views are a little more consonant with my own views, but because he really seems to be the kind of guy who is not afraid to roll up his sleeves and get out there in the public and talk to people and connect with people on a personal level, because ultimately, positions on issues are not what determines how most people vote. People look at a candidate and they basically say, look, I know nobody's going to agree with me 100% of the time. Can I trust this guy? Does this guy think like me? Do I think that he's going to make sensible decisions when he's faced with the hundreds of bills that will come up before him? because I don't know his position on all of these things, but do I have a gut instinct that this guy's got his head in the right place? And I think that's the way people are looking at Mr. Diaz. And we'll see come June 23rd, this will be not only the coronation of the Democratic nominee, but this will be the person who's going to take over that seat that has long been held by Democrats in a district that Hillary Clinton dominated. And I am just looking forward to the call that Hillary Clinton makes to Ruben Diaz, congratulating him on his victory. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.